execution is 99% of it. The idea is 1%. And most of the time the idea changes as you go through. And so it's all about the execution. And so we make it really easy for decision makers to make decisions. So we maybe take 1 million different lines of data, but we'll show Doug, 2 out of your athletes are unhealthy, or 4 of your athletes out of 50 are ready to race in this race. And so there's so much data behind that. But yeah, we'll show him one widget, one card, which gives him basically a green or red light. And so he doesn't have to look at all the data, he doesn't have to analyze it himself. We just say, yep, here's a dashboard. We built a platform that collected all of that data, analysed that data, and basically fed him very key insights. It's overwhelming, all the data we collect right now, and actually it's not about how much we have so much data. Actually the value is in interpreting data or giving someone the ability to interpret data very easily and very quickly. And so we make it really easy for decision makers to make decisions.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how and where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute of every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You will hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested. Hi, freedom fighters. Are you achieving peak performance and sustainable success in any and all areas of your life? How do you know? How are you achieving it? How do you transform your dreams into reality? And what separates the dreamers from the doers and the deliverers? How do you link you or your organisation's long-term individual and collective vision to what everyone is actually doing on a day-to-day basis? How do you know that the choices and actions that you're taking today are the best ones to achieve your lifestyle dreams or your organisation's success? And how are you measuring and tracking your progress? Is there a simple way to ensure that you're making the right things happen and not getting distracted on new shiny things that look exciting but aren't moving the needle most in relation to your ultimate goals? Well, today we help you answer these questions. And the answers are actually simpler than you think. But simple doesn't mean easy. Like anything worthwhile in life, it needs relentless collective commitment over time. Now, in recent episodes, we've been discussing peak performance and sustainable success. Episode 180 with Paul Roos unpacked his approach from his book Here It Is that enabled him to take the bedraggled and betrodden Sydney Swans from the bottom of the barrel to win their first premiership in 72 years in just 3 seasons. And he did this as a coach using a very simple system that connects and commits everyone to that achievement of what I like to call big, hairy-ass goals. And earlier episodes have focused on establishing audacious moonshot visions that inspire and galvanise disparate individuals and teams to achieve great things. But how can we really do and achieve big things at our individual, team, business, organisational, community, and even country level? And this is important because I believe that the future of our great planet is at a critical moment. Why do I say this? Because many of our leaders, big institutions and governments are failing us in our greatest time of need. Our individual and collective responses to the global pandemic are clear evidence of our reactive, piecemeal and dishevelled, divided approach, built on the back of selfish and self-serving interests that lack a clear unified vision, lacks collective commitment, and lacks personal and group accountability. So how do we turn this around? How do we correct these wrongs and choose the right course? Well, in my continued search for the essence of sustainable success that's achievable at every level, I've been focusing on those tribes and collectives that continuously achieve bigger and better things. What do the likes of Google, Intel, the Gates Foundation, Disney, Dropbox, LinkedIn, Slack, Spotify, and many current successful companies and organisations do that separates them from the pack and allows them to go from strength to strength, while most and many organisations and governments continue to struggle? Now, we've all got ideas and dreams, but how many of us actually make them happen and continue to make them happen, regardless of size, scale, situation or circumstance? The answer? Are you ready for it? It's establishing meaningful objectives and measurable results. Whoopie-doo. Now that sounds simple and boring when I say it like that. But what does this really mean? And how can you apply an approach without complexity that allows you to set meaningful goals and objectives that are easily measured and monitored, that ensure that what you're doing day to day is contributing in the most impactful way to your big rocks? Now, I'm not talking here about the old conventional organisational goal setting and performance management systems that tend to be complex, retrospective, infrequent, backward-looking, top-down, hierarchical, and highly administrative, and ultimately not very effective. They get bogged down and lost in their implementation and end up being meaningless and time-consuming at best, and end up being focused on the wrong things and measure the wrong things at worst, creating unwanted consequences like internal competitiveness and division, and limited progress towards or achievement of what really matters. What I'm talking about is the simple OKR framework, which stands for Objectives and Key Results. And this is best captured in John Doerr's book, Measure What Matters, that details an approach that is at the heart of the continued achievements of all the enduringly successful organisations that I spoke about earlier. Today, we're going to share with you what really makes a difference. That's what's crucial. How and why they set meaningful and audacious goals. The right goals for the right reasons. So let's dive into the mind of John Doerr. And his very appropriate surname pretty much sums it up. He's a doer, not just a dreamer. So what are these things called OKRs and how does it work? To help you get clarity on a simple but effective way to achieve any worthwhile goal, I'm going to draw directly on Doerr's work from his book, some summaries and reviews produced by the productivity team and Nick Kettner, along with Doerr's discussion with Donald Sull, as well as Doerr's TED Talk. Now, John Doerr gleaned his inspiration for the creation of OKRs and Measure What Matters from the time he spent at Intel under the leadership of Andy Grove, who's been called the greatest manager of his or any other era. Andy once said to Doerr, "John, it almost doesn't matter what you know. Execution is what matters the most. It's all about excellent execution and measuring the right things." And so Andy invented a system called Objectives and Key Results, or OKRs, where he confirmed that the two key phrases of management by objective systems are the objectives and the key results. And they match the two purposes. The objective is the direction. The key results have to be measured. But at the end, You can look and without any argument you can say, did I do that? Or didn't I do that? Yes, no, simple. Objectives and key results, or OKRs, are a simple goal-setting system, and they work for organisations, they work for teams, and they even work for you as an individual. The objectives are the what you want to have accomplished. The key results are how you're going to get that done. Objectives, key results. What and how. But here's the truth. Many of us are setting goals wrong. And unfortunately, most of us are not setting goals at all. And then there's those organisations that set objectives and meet them. They ship their sales, they hit their revenue targets, they make their numbers, but they lack a sense of purpose to inspire their teams. So how do you get these goals the right way? First, you've got to answer the question, why? Why? Because truly transformational teams align their ambitions to their passion and to their purpose. And they develop a clear and compelling sense of why, as captured by Simon Sinek in his famous book, Start With Why. And if you haven't read that yet, then make sure you do. Now, to illustrate the importance of your why, let's share Don Doer's example of a remarkable entrepreneur that he worked with. And her name's Ginny Kim. Ginny runs a company called Nuna. Nuna's a healthcare data company. And when Nuna was founded, they used data to serve the health needs of a lot of workers at large companies. And then, 2 years into the company's life, the federal government issued a proposal to build the first ever cloud database for Medicaid, which is a program that serves 70 million Americans. It serves their poor, their children, and their people with disabilities. Now, Nuna, at the time, was just 15 people, and this massive database had to be built in a year. And Nuna already had a whole set of commitments that they had to honour, and quite frankly, they weren't going to make much money on the project. This was one of those bet your company moments, and Ginny seized it. She jumped at the opportunity. She didn't flinch. Why? Well, it's a personal why. Ginny's younger brother, Kim Ong, has autism. And when he was just 7, he had his first grand mal seizure at Disneyland. He fell to the ground and he stopped breathing. Ginny's parents are Korean immigrants. They came to the country with limited resources, speaking little English, so it was up to Ginny to enrol her family in Medicaid. She was just 9 years old. That moment defined her mission, and that mission became her company. And that company bid on, won, and delivered on that contract. And in explaining Ginny's why, she said that Medicaid saved her family from bankruptcy, and today it provides for Kim Ong's health and for millions of others. Nuna was Ginny's love letter to Medicaid. Every row of data is a life whose story deserves to be told with dignity. And Ginny's story tells us that a compelling sense of why can be the launch pad for our objectives. Remember, objectives are what we want to have accomplished. And objectives are significant. They're action-orientated, they're inspiring, and they're a kind of vaccine against fuzzy, vague and unaccountable thinking. But OKRs just don't work for companies. They can help anyone and any organisation make massive impacts. Like the rock star Bono from U2, who John Doerr uses as a great example. Now, you'd think a rock star would be fairly unlikely to use objectives and key results. But for years, Bono has used OKRs to wage a global war against poverty and disease. And his One Foundation has focused on 2 really awesome, audacious objectives. The first is debt relief for the poorest countries in the world, and the second is universal access to anti-HIV drugs. Now, why are these good objectives? Well, let's go back to our OKR checklist. Are they significant? Yep. Concrete? Yep. Action-orientated? Hell yeah. Inspirational? Well, this is what Bono actually says about OKRs in his own musical words. And no, I'm not going to attempt a bad Irish accent. So you're passionate. How passionate? What actions does your passion lead you to do? If the heart doesn't find a perfect rhyme with the head, then your passion means nothing. The Okr Framework cultivates the madness, the chemistry contained inside it. It gives us an environment for risk, for trust, where failing is not a fireable offence. And when you have that sort of structure and environment and the right people, magic is around the corner. Now, how good is that? OKRs cultivate the madness, and magic is right around the corner. That's awesome. So with Ginny's example, we've covered the whys, and with Bono, the whats of goal setting. Now let's turn our attention to the hows. Remember, the hows are the key results. That's how we meet our objectives. And good results are specific and time-bound. They're aggressive but realistic. They're measurable and they're verifiable. Those are good key results. Now, way back in 1999, John Doerr introduced OKRs to Google's co-founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, and I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing that right, when they were both just 24 years old and just starting out in their garage. And every quarter of every year since then, every Googler has written down their objectives and their key results. They've graded them and they've published them for everyone to see. And importantly, they're not used for bonuses or for promotions. They're used for a higher purpose, and that's to get collective commitment to truly stretch goals. As an example, in 2008, a Googler, Sundar Pichai, took on an objective to build the best internet browser. He was very thoughtful about how he chose his key results. How do you measure the best browser? It could be ad clicks or engagement, but no. He said numbers of users, because users are going to decide if Chrome was going to be a great browser or not. So he had this 3-year-long objective, build the best browser. And then every year, he stuck to the same key results, numbers of users, but he upped the ante. In the first year, his goal was 20 million users, and he missed it. He got less than 10 million. In the second year, he raised the bar to 50 million, and he got to 37 million users. Somewhat better, but in the third year, he upped the ante once more to 100 million. He launched an aggressive marketing campaign, broader distribution, improved the technology, and kaboom. He got 111 million users. And Sundar went on to become CEO of Google and Alphabet. Now, here's why I like this story. Not so much for the happy ending, but it shows someone carefully choosing the right objective and then sticking to it year after year after year. And remember that Doerr taught OKRs to Google when it was just a 30-person company. And now Google's 80,000 plus employees continue to use the system to achieve bigger and better things. And everyday startups like MyFitnessPal and Zoom say that they wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for Doerr's OKR goal-setting system. In fact, Google's co-founder Larry Page is on record as saying that as much as he hates process, good ideas with great execution are how you make magic. And that's where OKRs come in. And the magic of OKRs is created by 3 main ingredients. So let me break down further how these 3 ingredients come together to create the OKR goal-setting system that you can use to bring your biggest ideas to life. Ingredient number 1 is an audacious objective. Now, as James Cameron, the director of the highest grossing films of all time, Avatar and Titanic, says, if you set your goals ridiculously high and it's a failure, you'll still fail well above everyone else's successes. So the first step of the OKR system is to set an objective with the same spirit that JFK set the objective of going to the moon in the 1960s that we discussed previously in another episode. You'll remember that JFK didn't pick the audacious objective of going to the moon because it was easy. He picked it because it was hard. He picked it because that objective would serve to unify, galvanise, organise and measure the very best of the American people. To set a moonshot-like objective that's going to inspire you and force you to expand your skills, start by being idealistic, not realistic. Ask yourself questions like, if I were free from constraints and had unlimited resources, what change would I want to make in the world? Or if I had a unique opportunity to be the best in the world at one thing, what would that be? When you come up with your ideal objective, scale it back until it's one step short of being impossible. You want your goal to be big but believable. For example, when the Gates Foundation started, they had an objective of eradicating malaria by 2015. But they soon realised that that was an impossible goal that actually demotivated the team. So they adjusted their objective to eradicate malaria by 2040. The goal was still big, but now it was believable. Now it inspired the team. So the first step you need to take in developing an OKR is creating a big, audacious objective that captures your imagination and compels you to grow. Now, OKR ingredient number 2 revolves around the quality and quantity of key results. John Dewar says objectives are the stuff of inspiration and far horizons, while key results are more earthbound and metric-driven. Your key results are the 3 to 5 things that you can improve that would indicate that you're getting closer to your objective. Key results are focused on things like customer satisfaction scores and any other thing that would indicate progress that you can measure. Now, you may remember from episode 180 that Paul Roos's objective was to win the Sydney Swans' first premiership in 72 years, a goal that seemed absolutely laughable at the time. And to achieve this, he analysed and defined the measurable key result areas that had the biggest impact on their success. These were clean ball handling of the ground balls and effective tackling. These were the 2 closely guarded stats that guided their success for years to come, given their massive impact on winning games. Here's another example from Measure What Matters of weak, average and strong key results. Let's say that you and your race car team had the objective of winning the Grand Prix. Weak key results would be increased lap speed and reduced pit stop time. Average key results would be increased average speed by 2% and reduced average pit stop time by 1 second. Now, these key results are better because they're specific and measurable, but strong key results would be increased average lap speed by 2%, reduced average pit stop time by 1 second, reduced pit stop errors by 50%, and practice pit stops 1 hour every day. These key results aren't just specific and measurable, they also contain a mix of quantity and quality key results to make sure the team isn't cutting corners to reach your objective. Think of key results as the gauges on the dashboard of your car that monitor how you're going on your journey to your objective destination. These gauges provide specific values that you can monitor and inform you if you're going to get to your destination on time. For your car to get you to the destination, you want to increase your speed while monitoring your revs per minute and your oil temperature to make sure your motor won't break down while pursuing your objective. In this light, OKR ingredient number 3 is traffic light colour coding of regular OKR check-ins. Circling back to Bono's One Foundation, that has actually helped deliver nearly $50 billion in funding for health initiatives across Africa, his organisation has been able to significantly reduce corruption across Africa and channel money from African oil reserves to fight extreme poverty. And in the book, Bono says that the OKR traffic light colour coding system has absolutely transformed the One Foundation's board meetings. They've sharpened their strategy, their execution, and their results. And they've made the One Foundation a more effective weapon in the fight against extreme poverty. The OKR traffic light colour coding system works a bit like this. On a regular basis, perhaps each week or month or quarter, you look at your key results and you label each one either green, yellow or red. Green means that you're 70 to 100% on target and you should simply keep doing what you're doing. Yellow means you're between 30 to 70% on target and you need to develop a correction or recovery plan. And a red key result means you're only 0 to 30% on target and you need to either develop a major recovery plan or replace that key result altogether. Let's take one of my current objectives of increasing the reach and message of the Get Invested podcast to over 1 million time-poor, hard-working professionals. To achieve this, one of my key results is to increase the number of new subscribers on my new Bushy Martin YouTube channel and increase them to 1,000 in the next 3 months. Yeah, there's only about 24 at the moment. And I've got to say, you could do me a massive favour to help make this happen by jumping on YouTube right now and subscribing to Bushy Martin, where you can find every episode of Get Invested, along with my regular bush bites on all things property and finance. Now, let's say that in a month I've only increased my YouTube subscribers by 100. So I'm only 10% of the way there, which is a code red. Clearly, I'd need to adjust my strategy and create a recovery plan that could involve making new types of videos or collaborating with other YouTube creators and leveraging into their audiences. Now, John Dewar says there's no need to hold stubbornly to an outdated projection. Just strike it off your list and move on, because our goals are servants to our purpose, not the other way round. But here's the surprising thing about the traffic light colour coding system. If your key results are always green and you're approaching 100% complete, then you've done something wrong. At Intel, Dewar says that if a department so much as approached 100%, it was presumed to be setting its sights way too low and there'd be hell to play. So if you're feeling and finding that it's easy to get all of your key results into the green zone, adjust their difficulty so you get a mix of green and yellow. By using this colour coding system, you're held accountable for both setting challenging goals and making progress on those goals. So if you want to accomplish something significant, something that matters, turn your goal into an audacious objective that actually inspires you. Then find a mix of 3 to 5 quality and quantity key results that you can actually measure. Then periodically apply traffic light colours to those key results to continuously challenge and hold yourself accountable. And make them public so everyone that's important to you is also aware of them. Now, as an example, one of my current personal OKRs revolves around my love for music, piano and singing. Music is the greatest emotional engager and unifier that I know. Its vibration and energy brings your heart and head together and has the power to inspire, motivate and move mountains like nothing else that I know. Music can create and shift moods by the way it makes you feel. Music heals, transforms, and helps us to imagine a better, brighter world. To experience and enjoy the full spectrum of our emotions from joy through to sorrow, music has the power to make me cry and laugh. To connect to life's experience in a much more emotional way. that brings richness and soul to the everyday and creates and anchors lasting memories. When I hear a piece of music, it takes me straight back to where I was and what I was doing when I first heard it. What about you? So my why is to move you with music. In this light, my music what objective is to create, perform and record a solo show that I'm calling Reflections by the 20th of December 2022, which at the moment's a bit over a year away. And my 3 how key results to make this happen are: 1, finalise the song and piano instrumental list of 12 performance pieces by Friday the 17th of September. Secondly, to learn a new song or instrumental to performance level every 3 weeks. And thirdly, to perform a song or instrumental live on Facebook every month, starting from Wednesday the 29th of September. And now that I've stated them publicly, it's up to you to keep me accountable. And that's it. That's how simple OKRs can help you move the needle on your unfulfilled dreams. Now, the great book Measure What Matters also shows you how to utilise OKRs to improve the focus, the alignment and the accountability of yourself and your organisation so that you can achieve bigger and better things. Now that we understand how OKRs work and how to define and track progress, let's dive into the 4 superpowers of OKRs, and they are focus, align, track and stretch. The real benefit of OKRs is in how they unlock opportunities for collaboration and transparency throughout your organisation. OKR superpower number 1 is focus and commitment to priorities. The simple structure of OKRs really empowers leaders to be able to clearly define actionable goals. So rather than setting lofty, vague or unattainable or unactionable goals, the OKR framework ensures you not only have to define the objective, but exactly how that objective is going to be achieved. OKR focus and commitment to priorities means that high-performance organisations are able to home in on work that's important and are equally clear on what doesn't matter. OKRs impel leaders to make hard choices and decisions. They're a precision communication tool for departments, teams, and individual contributors. By dispelling confusion, OKRs give us the focus needed to win. So superpower number 1 is all about focus and getting very clear on the handful of objectives that are critical for you and your organisation. OKR superpower number 2 is to align and connect for teamwork. And this is where some of the real potential of OKRs really starts to become clear, because there are a number of cloud-based OKR tools out there that really unlock transparency and collaboration within organisations. Some of them are Inspire, Week Done, Heartspace, and Engagedly. Now, at a glance with these OKR tools, you can see all of the OKRs within an organisation, and every individual team member has their own list of OKRs showing the handful of things that they're focused on completing. So even the most junior member of an organisation can log on and see what everybody in the organisation is actually working on. And everybody's using this common protocol, so you can see what the CEO is focused on. You can see the top-line objectives and key results for the time period, be it by week, quarter, biannual or annual. And you can align what it is that you're working on as an individual or as a team leader or manager within the organisation with the mutually agreed top-level objectives. They unlock the ability for individual teams and managers to select their own objectives and key results that are going to help move the organisation forward. And of course, because it's transparent and everybody can see what everybody's working on, there's naturally built-in accountability. So this is a very powerful system for not only keeping everybody aligned, but for allowing everybody to figure out how to help move the organisation forward. In this way, OKR Superpower number 2 allows you to align and connect for teamwork, as the OKR transparency means that everyone's goals, from the CEO down, are openly shared. Individuals link their objectives to the company's game plan, identify cross-dependencies, and coordinate with other teams. By connecting each and every contributor to the organisation's success, top-down alignment brings meaning to work. And by deepening people's sense of ownership, bottom-up OKRs foster engagement and innovation. OKR Superpower number 3 is to track for accountability. And building on what I just mentioned, OKRs are highly trackable because not only have you defined an objective, but you've defined very measurable key results. Using the traffic light colour-coded tracking measures that I've already described, team members regularly meet to report on the scoring and the progress of their OKRs, so that at a glance, everybody in the company can see where teams might be falling behind, where they might be struggling, what's on track, and when there are opportunities to help. You can jump in because not only as a potential team member can you see that another team is struggling, but you can see that maybe your own project has a dependency there and you can jump in and help, or if you have the relevant experience and expertise, even if it has nothing to do with what you're working on, if you see it's falling behind, you can jump in and help. So this is a very powerful system for not only managing accountability, but allowing team members to jump in and help each other when they recognise that something's falling behind. So OKR Superpower number 3 means that tracking for accountability, OKRs are driven by relevant and meaningful data, which means measuring the right things rather than just measuring what can be measured. In this way, OKRs are animated by periodic check-ins, objective grading, and continuous reassessment, all in a spirit of no judgment, accountability. An endangered key result triggers action to get it back on track, or to revise or replace it if it's warranted. Now, the final OKR Superpower number 4 is to stretch for amazing. And the idea here is that it can be tempting when you're defining your OKRs to set your goals low because you want all of your OKRs to be on track. And you want to make sure that you achieve everything. And you don't want other people in the organisation to see that your goals are consistently falling behind. So because of this temptation, part of the culture beyond OKRs is to stretch for some more challenging goals within your framework or what it is that you as a team member are attempting to achieve. And so, for example, Google defines their OKRs under one of two categories, either committed goals or aspirational goals, also known as stretch goals. So every single OKR is defined as either being committed or aspirational. Now, committed goals are things that are tied to key critical aspects of the business. These specific OKRs are expected to be completed in full. You're expected to get 100% completion. And they should be marked green at the end of the reporting period, whether it be a quarter or whatever the agreed period of time is. But aspirational goals are very different. While you certainly want to set things that are achievable and have the potential to be completed, there can be as high as a 40% failure rate on aspirational KPIs. And so there's a lot more leeway and flexibility here. And teams are actually encouraged to push for these kinds of stretch goals to avoid teams being subtly incentivised to set very achievable goals. So you want to separate the two and have your committed goals and your more aspirational goals so that teams are given an opportunity to chase things that might not be so achievable but help to move the organisation forward. So when aspirational goals like this are chosen wisely, individuals are encouraged to take risks without fear of failure, and the payoff can be massive. So OKR Superpower 4, to stretch for amazing, means that OKRs motivate us to excel by doing more than we thought possible. By testing our limits and affording the freedom to fail, they release our most creative, ambitious selves. Now, the failings of old, outdated and ineffective annual performance reviews have sparked a robust OKR alternative for continuous performance management. In response, John Doerr's book also introduces OKR's younger siblings, what he calls CFRs, which stands for conversation, feedback and recognition. And they show how OKRs and CFRs can team up to lift leaders, contributors and organisations to a whole new level. And finally, OKRs are also a supportive tool in easing and expediting culture change and creating an open, transparent culture defined by personal and collective accountability. So OKRs make it easy for everyone in your organisation to look up, to look down and to look sideways, to see if you're aligned, to see if what you're working on is ultimately moving the organisation forward. And so, as the book describes, the accountability, transparency and actionable structure of OKRs is what makes this such an incredibly powerful system. You can see exactly what others are working on. They can see what you're working on. You can reduce redundancy. You can jump in when somebody needs help and their objective is falling behind. And everybody can help keep each other accountable. As you can hear, OKRs are a very simple protocol and framework for defining what it is that you want to achieve and how you're going to go about achieving it. They link your dreams of tomorrow with your choices and actions today. But as good as OKRs can be, their success lies in two very key things. Firstly, the quality of the objective, as we've already discussed, but as importantly, what you measure. And this is where the real challenge comes in. As we've discussed in previous episodes of Get Invested, adopting a purely logical, rational engineering style approach to measurement can dumb down the effectiveness of key results to what you can easily measure, instead of what really needs to be measured. But the assumption of linear measures can also lead to limited linear results. Operating in our dynamic, radically uncertain and constantly changing environment, where we're now continuously drowned in a deluge of data and noise, can be complex, confusing, and making it very difficult and extremely time-consuming to synthesize the gold from the dross and to join dots that we can't see, but are actually very important to our insights and our understanding. We need to be measuring and interpreting the right thing at the right time in the right way. By synthesizing the plethora of data points that technology now makes available in a quick, easy and effective way that collates and considers multidimensional measures and doesn't paralyse us in overwhelm. So the critical challenge for the success of OKRs is in deciding what and how to measure critical key results. What combination of data is required in order to define relevant measures and how we measure them. And how do we do this? Well, this is where today's guest, Ben Tripodi, comes in. Ben is the CEO and founder of the hugely and rapidly successful Lumin Group and H.O.A.P startups, where H.O.A.P, which is H.O.A.P, stands for Human Optimisation and Performance. Working closely alongside global professional sporting teams, as well as large private corporations, Ben's Lumin Sports and Hoap personal wellness teams specialise in utilising big data and machine learning to revolutionise the way professional sporting teams monitor elite athletes, as well as corporations monitor all team members dynamically and instantly to inform and improve wellness, health, performance, leadership and decision making. Lumin Sports Arc is a sophisticated data visualisation tool that replaces old and outdated athlete management systems. Lumin Sports collaborates with professional sporting teams to give every decision maker the tools to interpret masses of complex team data. For a young startup business, Lumin boasts a healthy client list that includes World Tour cycling teams, AFL teams, Olympic programs, and elite US National Collegiate Athletic Associations or NCAA Division I football teams. In a similar but broader-based corporate fashion, H.O.A.P or H.O.A.P leverages big data and machine learning to provide effective physical, mental and emotional performance tools for you and your corporations of today to ensure that you become your best selves tomorrow. As software designed for the modern workforce, H.O.A.P is pioneering performance well-being for teams and organisations of all sizes. And H.O.A.P is the first tool to quantify well-being for leaders and to educate everyone to be their best selves. The Lumin Group's elite sport and organisational tools allow you to measure the right things rather than just what you can measure, so that all of the dynamic data points can be combined quickly and easily to help you make better and faster decisions and benchmark your key results on the way to achieving your goals' objectives. So, in our great conversation today, Ben unpacks human performance and data visualisation tools. We discuss how to achieve peak performance and the importance of measurement. He opens your ears to the challenges and risks of startups and what they entail. Ben reveals his relationship with money and how he embraced investing at a very young age. He paints a picture of his lifestyle vision and how he's investing to make it happen. He opens up on how he consistently able to overcome any fear of rejection, to approach anyone regardless of their power or position in order to garner their support. And he shares how COVID totally disrupted his Lumin business and how he was able to pivot very quickly to leverage his sophisticated big data insight tools from elite sport to the world of corporate business, where H.O.A.P emerged to continue his considerable startup success. And everything that Ben and his Lumin Group does revolves around and supports peak performance and goal achievement by feeding into your OKRs or objectives and key results, by measuring what matters and giving you the ability to do this quickly and easily. To find out more about Lumin Sports or H.O.A.P and how they can help you and your organisation achieve superior results, check them out at www.luminsports.com, that's LUMIN sports.com, or H.O.A.P, that's www.hoap.com. Now, as John Doerr of Measure What Matters concludes, countless individuals use objectives and key results to grow more disciplined in their thinking, clearer in communication, and more purposeful in their action. OKRs create acute focus, open sharing, exacting measurement, and a license to shoot for the moon. Where OKRs take root, merit trumps seniority. Leaders and managers become more valuable coaches, mentors, and architects. Actions and data speak much louder than words. In sum, objectives and key results are a potent, proven force for operating excellence. They've worked to help take Google to the stratosphere and beyond over the last 20 years. So why not for you and your organisation? Now, Doerr thinks of OKRs as transparent vessels that are made from the whats and the hows of your ambitions. What really matters is the why that you pour into those vessels. That's why we do our work. And let's be clear, OKRs are not a silver bullet. They're not going to be a substitute for strong culture or for strong leadership. But when those fundamentals are in place, they can take you to the mountaintop. So before we get into today's great conversation with Ben Tripodi on measuring what matters and what makes a difference, I want you to think about your life for a moment. Do you have the right metrics? Take time to write down your dreams, your vision, and your values, and cascade them down to your objectives and your key results. And do it today. It'll transform your life. And if you'd like some feedback on your vision and your OKRs, feel free to email them to me at bushy@knowhowproperty.com.au. And if you want to apply the OKR approach to investing in order to achieve and fund your ideal lifestyle goals, Join me to complete your Freedom Flight test and Ready, Able and Willing Raw Report test that will help you to quantify where you're at, where you want to be, what's the gap, and what's your ability and best way of bridging it. It provides you with a GPS and a roadmap to ensure that what you're doing today is moving you towards your ideal lifestyle. To book your ticket or to find out more, just jump on knowhowproperty.com.au/freedom fighters, or just click the link in the show notes. Now, if we think of the world-changing goals of an Intel, of a Nuna, of a Bono, and of Google, they're all remarkable. Intel's anywhere and everywhere computing. Nuna's affordable, high-quality healthcare for everyone. Bono, ending global poverty. And Google's access to all the world's information. They're all game-changing goals that are being achieved and powered by OKRs, by measuring what matters. Now get inspired to start and achieve your unfulfilled goals and dreams by following the example of Ben Tripodi. Hi Freedom Fighters. Now, in our current constant connected and COVID-challenged and radically changing interdependent global world that we're all living in, achieving and sustaining peak performance in any endeavour across the key pillars of what I call self-health and wealth is increasingly reliant on collecting and interpreting relevant data and information. But with the explosion in technology in recent times, we've shifted rapidly from no information to drowning in data. So how can we make sense of it all and draw quick, valuable insights from the masses of disparate and complex info without getting buried forever in endless analysis paralysis? Today we're going to find out by having a chat with leading performance technologist Ben Tripodi. So welcome and let's get invested, Ben.
Thanks, Bushy. Appreciate it, mate.
Ben, really looking forward to having a chat, mate. You're very well known in the startup world in Adelaide for doing some fantastic things, but there's going to be listeners from around the globe tuning in here that won't have heard your story. So just to kick things off, mate, can you give us a rundown on who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do?
I like that last bit. That's good. I don't often get asked that. So yeah, I'm the CEO of the Lumin Group, which is essentially two brands, Lumin Sports and a new brand called H.O.A.P. So the Lumin Group, H.O.A.P and Lumin Sports exist to provide effective physical and mental performance tools for humans of today so that they can be their best selves tomorrow. And so what that is, we're a human performance company that is always striving to give people the tools, whether you're a professional athlete, an amateur athlete, an everyday person, a mum or dad, a business leader, building the tools so that everyone can improve to be their best selves. And we now work across professional and amateur sport, armed forces, and corporate as well. So work with such a variety of people and who use our software as well.
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah.
And why we do it?
Yes, that's the interesting bit.
It's the cliche bit for me, it's look, I like to think I'm making a positive difference in the world, but in reality, it's I love what I do. I love taking on really audacious things. I love human performance. I like to think that there's so much untapped potential in people, and when we see that in athletes, and I get to see them kind of achieve their absolute success, and because I've seen that firsthand, I feel like everyday people can really learn something from them as well. So, I think I probably love, in terms of being in a business, I think I love being in control of building a vehicle that can create value for shareholders, for customers, for employees, and I think that's, for me, what I was kind of born to do, and I don't think I could do anything else really.
Yeah, interesting, and I'm going to dive into that because there aren't a lot of people that are happy to jump off the cliff like you have and repeatedly do that, generally without a parachute. So I'd love to delve into that in a minute. But to start off on that, can we sort of circle back to as far back as you would like to start, really, and talk us through what you've invested your time, your energy, and your money in on your journey so far. What have been the highs and the lows? What have you learned from all of that, and how did that get you to where you are today?
Yeah, wow. It's a lot in terms of. I'm still pretty young. So I'm only 28, but I think sometimes that I'm going on 80. I did notice, and I'll go back to the start, but I did notice in probably the last few years was this, almost like an exponential change in everything that in my thinking, my life, and I guess maturity, and I see that in a lot of people as well. Kind of, 23. I kind of see, when you're 16, you're kind of figuring out 16 to 18, you're figuring out what you want to do. 18 to 21, you're trying new things, doing what everyone tells you to do, going to uni, so you do that. And then from about 21 to 25, you go through this ultimate period of anxiety and frustration because you're kind of doing things that someone's told you to do, but you want to do other things, and it's a real period of finding yourself. And I feel like 25 onwards, you kind of, a few things have gone right and you kind of double down. And I've actually seen that across a lot of people in my network who go through it, probably mainly males who really struggle in those early 20s. And I think that's actually just goes, I think it's just it kind of sums up probably my period of time as well, which I'll dive into. So I was a junior triathlete who wanted to be a professional triathlete.
So just awesome place to start, mate. I'd love to know why your attraction even into the world of being a triathlete, because that's, again, that would be very daunting for a lot of people, mate. And while you know it intimately, there'll be a lot of people that sort of have some idea. Talk to us about, because I know how grueling a triathlon is. Talk to us about what that means and why you were so hell bent on becoming a world champion in that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was kind of I guess my family is probably more of a swimming family, so I was always kind of involved in swimming, and I did lots of different sports when I was at school. But it was probably when I was about 16, I just became obsessed with Ironman Hawaii. And for those listeners who don't know what a triathlon is, it's a swim, bike, and a run. And it's kind of broken up into a couple of different types of racing. You have Ironman racing, which is your big kind of 3.5K swim, 180K bike ride, and a marathon run. So big stuff. Then you kind of have anything in between to then a sprint distance, which is 750 swim, 20K bike ride, and a 5K run. So still an effort, but that's what they call a sprint distance, and they generally last for an hour or less, whereas your Ironmans are probably 8 hours or longer. So I was just, Hawaii Ironman is probably the most famous triathlon in the world. And that is just, they used to play it on the Channel 9 Wide World of Sports, and it was just really fascinating. I was really obsessed with just seeing people kind of really push themselves, and I don't know what it was. I was drawn to endurance sports, and I started riding my bike a bit more when I was swimming, and started running a bit more, and then before you know it, I went all in, and bought the bike, bought the gear. It's not a cheap sport. And I joined a club and started to love it more and more and more. And I probably did that for a significant period of time. But when I first started, it wasn't like I was doing Ironmans. I did a couple of longer distance stuff when I was probably 18. But it was actually the shorter, faster stuff that I loved at that stage. And I loved the racing. I loved competing. I loved the training. I loved the discipline of the training. And it was always interesting because you'd always tell people how much training you do. And I wasn't a professional, so they always thought that was weird that I was training 30 hours a week. But and I guess it was, but I was at uni, so I wasn't really doing much else. But it was just what I did. And I actually really enjoyed the process. And then the more I enjoyed the process, the less I really cared about racing, and just it then became a part of my life. And so as my goal was to become a professional, but then probably when I was about 21, as I was getting better and better and kind of needed to take that next step into the pro ranks, I knew it wasn't for me. I loved the training.
What? Take me to the, if you can, to the point when you had that realisation that my goal of becoming professional probably isn't going to happen. What was it that brought you to that conclusion, and how did you feel at that time?
I can pinpoint the exact moment. I reckon I was probably 21, and it was I'd been training up, so I was a part of this kind of professional team, and this big event in Queensland on the Sunshine Coast called the Maluba Triathlon, and that was probably the biggest race on our calendar. And it's basically if you got top 4, I think you automatically got a pro license, and then if you got top 10, I think you could apply based on your time. And so that was the goal. And so we're all going in to basically get the pro license and start our pro careers. And we're kind of probably the last year where we kind of either had to do it or you didn't. And so lots of training went behind it. I was probably in the best shape of my life, and I was racing. And halfway through the race, I just thought, I don't really want to do this anymore. And it was that exact moment. I remember it was a 40k bike ride, and we're out on the highway, and it was pretty hot. And I was drinking some of my water. And it was at that moment I just thought, you know what, this is not what I want to do. And it wasn't like a give up because this is too hard. It was actually like a really nice moment. I was actually like, I don't even feel bad. I'm going to enjoy this race and I'm going to finish it. But this would be my last race. And I got to the end of it. I ended up having a bad race, but it was. I got to the end of it and I wasn't disappointed. And I knew that was the moment when it was probably time to pull up stumps. And it was a huge time commitment, and I always had a huge interest in business, and that's really where I wanted to go. And just to give some background, at that time, I'd actually started my first business, which was importing carbon fiber cycling wheels, and I was selling them and promoting them. And so I was always involved in my sport, and it was probably a year into that when I was like, I do want to get more into that, and I always train hard and I always be involved in the sport, but it was that moment I knew I wasn't going to do it, and finished the race and had a beer, and that was pretty much it. I think I sold my bike after that.
Yeah, love it. So you mentioned that when you're in the heat of that, you're at uni. What were you doing at uni? And again, get a lot of why questions for me today. What were you doing, and why were you doing it?
Yeah, so university, I went to school which was very academic, which was great, and obviously there's this huge promotion to go to university, and it was kind of just that thing that you did. In hindsight, I don't think I should have gone to university. It didn't really bring much for me, but I was a pretty studious person. Like I wasn't.
Yeah, why do you say that, mate? I'm really interested in that, because you're right. There's almost an unwritten expectation for a lot of Aussies that if you do well in high school, then you're going to go to uni. It's like that's sort of the normal passage. It's the same pathway I took to do architecture, and exactly the same. There was just I didn't think about it. I was going to uni. It's a matter of what I was going to do at uni. There was no question about whether I should be going to uni or not. Talk to me about that, because I've had this conversation with my son. I said, there's no point going to uni unless you're really clear on why you're going and where it's going to get you to. If you're just going to go along because that's the thing to do, then don't waste your time.
Well, it's really interesting, and it's probably a similar thing, right? It's just what you did. And I went to a school which was a very good school, and it's quite interesting because a lot of people's parents all owned businesses, and so they were all reasonably well off, but it wasn't because they went to uni. It's because they created businesses, but they all told their kids to go to uni. And so I used to find that quite interesting and weird. But it's just kind of the thing you did. I actually graduated from school with a really high TER or ATAR, and again, it was a natural thing. I enjoyed health. I was doing triathlon at the time, so I thought, no, I need it. It was all around everything I wanted to do was about me being a better triathlete. So it was about health, and it's about, okay, well, do I become a doctor? It's funny, actually, I wanted to become a paramedic, which wasn't going to help my triathlon, but it was to do in health. And then I was like, maybe I want to do like nuclear medicine, which is radiography. And it was kind of all about, I wanted to make money, so I was kind of looking at the things that made the most amount of money, and but also involved in health. And And then I realised with paramedics there's only one employer, so I struck that off the list and realised that, well, you're going to be a slave to the dollar for working for someone else your whole life. So then I was like, okay, well, I could build a medical practice if I did something else. And then I kind of swapped. I entered a few degrees, got accepted, then I kind of denied it last minute, and I ended up settling on a health science degree, which as a nutritionist. So I majored in nutrition in a health science degree, and that was, I guess, a bit of a cop-out in a way, because I didn't, like, I could have gone into multiple other degrees, but it was just a sign that I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so I just kind of settled on a pretty vague and generic degree, which in hindsight, like, this is what I mean, like, there's just probably no point in going if I think there was a clear sign there that actually university wasn't for me, and I should have taken a gap year or a couple of years off, and then I may have founded what I wanted to do and gone back at that stage. But in saying that, university for me was the best thing for me in other ways. I went to Flinders University, where I went part-time at uni as well, because, again, I wasn't really in a rush to finish because I didn't really want to be a nutritionist. And I was still racing at the time. But then Flinders University launched a program called the New Venture Institute, which was a pretty savvy thing for a university, where you could actually do electives in business, but you could basically run your own business inside those electives and get credits for it. And they would kind of help you. And that was actually amazing for me. I did that, and I got exposed to a bunch of mentors, got exposed to a bunch of different business people and business leaders who were associated with the uni but weren't students or anything like that, and they were actually separate from the uni. Awesome. And actually that was the best thing I got out of university. So in hindsight, it was good for me to do it, but my advice to others is if if you want to be a doctor, go to university. If you want to be a business leader, that's probably you're better off spending that money on. I'm still paying off my HECS debt, so you'd probably better off spending that money on starting a business.
Yeah, that's a very good call. Very good call. Okay, so you are doing the degree, and that the sort of New Venture Institute probably really opened your eyes to the opportunity to start building a business. Given that, were you already dabbling in you talked about the carbon cycle wheels that you were selling. Did that happen before that, or did that come out of that equation?
Yeah, I kind of see my life in three different worlds. Like I was always doing some sort of sport to a pretty high level. Triathlon was most of that. And at the same time, I was kind of doing all these things in parallel. So my triathlon career was going in one direction, my university's degree was going in one direction, and then I was always kind of had a degree of something to do with business or something to do with my own way of either creating new products or creating businesses. And so I probably started from I was 16. I had a compression garment business, so it's all in sport. That kind of fizzled out. In fact, it's still going now actually, but it's I'm out of that. And then I kind of moved on to carbon fiber wheels, importing them, and then I moved on to actually trying to build them and engineer them in Adelaide. And we actually had an amazing design, and that was what I did when I was at NVI. So it was kind of my triathlon career kind of finished when I hit NVI. My university degree was kind of ending when I went to NVI, and my business, I guess, endeavours had kind of been redefined into this more of this local engineering and design of wheels when I hit NVI as well. So it's kind of the culmination of, that was probably what happened when I was about 23 and 22, 23, and it was kind of anything before then I was trying lots of different things across three different kind of channels, and they all kind of came together at that kind of junction. And the big thing was a company called Finch Composites, which was my business where we were trying to redesign carbon fiber cycling wheels to perform better in crosswinds. So that was a huge issue for World Tour cyclists and Tour de France champions, and as well as triathletes, where the industries were creating wheels that go very fast in a straight line, but you get one crosswind and they almost blow you off your bike. And
of course,
we were trying to create a wheel that would go fast in the front direction, but if you got hit by a crosswind, that'd be super stable. And
that'd be a challenging exercise to come up with something that would work well. Where did that end up?
Yeah, so really interesting. I learned a lot. Looking back, it was so clear I knew where I could have taken it. But then I just didn't know how to raise capital. I didn't know how to have a strategy. I just didn't really know. Everyone told me what to do, but I couldn't see it. And it was really interesting looking back in hindsight, because I was really confused at that stage, because I kept falling back on the idea, well, I don't have any money, so how am I going to do it? And looking back now, I just feel like that's such a stupid thing to say, because you can get money from anywhere. But at the time, I just didn't know how. I hadn't seen it before. I didn't have the confidence to do it. And it was going to cost probably like a couple $100,000, right? Which now it doesn't seem that much, because I've raised way more than that from this business I'm in now. But at the stage, I just couldn't fathom it. And so we got some really good designs, and they worked all on our CFD, so computational fluid dynamics software that we're using. It was all the numbers were looking good. We just never got them made. We went and got some prototypes done, and just cost too much money, and we kind of just shut up shop, which is quite disappointing. But it probably went to show that I wasn't super passionate about it. I think I wanted it to work, but I wasn't willing to, walk on fire to make it work. And I think that's the difference now with my business we're going a bit further about now, is that I would do that, whereas I think you really have to want to do it. And probably goes to show that I didn't. And so that was but I learned a lot. I built a huge network during that time. I got to meet lots of people who are involved in my life now and involved in my business endeavors now. And they were it was just this junction of my life where everything up to that point kind of was the first step to my professional career.
Okay. Let's talk about that transition then, because you obviously got to a point where you sort of pretty much hit a wall with the carbon wheels exercise. So you decided, look, I'm just not going to, that's it, I'm done, I can't get the money. What did you do then? Where did that lead you to?
Yeah, so it led me to taking up a few different jobs. I just thought, okay, well, I'm just going to get a job now. And I kind of just I did probably 3 different jobs, but they were all in different things. Like, I went to work for one startup in health tech, which was kind of cool. Probably did that for 6 months to a year. Only 6 months. And just kind of saw a pretty young founder. He had a bit of money he raised, and he was doing some cool stuff in health, and I was just kind of helping out there. I thought that's kind of cool. And then kind of left that, though. That kind of fizzled out. And then I went and worked for a creative agency, which was really eye-opening for me. I was probably only there for a year, but I learned a lot about software and about, I guess, marketing. And I learned to work hard. It was a really good environment for young people to really kind of work hard. It was a pretty high-pressure environment.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was just still super active in the startup community, and I was still just seeing what I was still keeping my relationships with all my mentors I was working with, and I had a few connections in cycling just from my own sporting endeavours, and I just kind of kept staying in touch with them, and had a few world tour cycling teams who I'd meet up with when the Tour Down Under was on in Adelaide, and I just started to build up more connections with them. I used to go for more bike rides with them, and then it got to the point where I had this idea where I wanted to create this data visualization tool for professional sporting teams. And I just had a lot of mates in the network who were sports scientists, and they kept saying this one thing about, there's just all these clunky systems out there, and we just need a better way to analyze and view this data. And for about 2 or 3 years, basically from Finch Composites, from that time on, when I was just kind of doing other jobs, that same problem kept coming up. And it was in the creative agency, we were kind of in more of that fan engagement space. Mm-hmm. Sporting teams kept on saying, no, like, that's all well and good, but actually I don't know if you guys can do this, and we couldn't. And then I kind of left that business, and I didn't really have anything to do, and I went and spoke to went out to all my networks, and then a guy called Doug Ryder, who's the team owner of, was Team Dimension Data at the time, which is a world tour professional cycling team, and he basically said, hey, if you want to start building some of that tech for us, just let me know. And I was like, sure, but don't have any money. He's like, oh, no worries, we can sort that out. And he got his major sponsor, Dimension Data, to help fund basically some upfront orders and pay for some work to be done. And brought a team together and launched Lumin Sports, and that was 3.5 years ago. So,
let's jump right on that, because that in itself, for someone pretty much to come along with an open checkbook is what I'm hearing, and say, we believe in you, Ben. Just get it done for us. That doesn't happen very easily or very often, mate. So I'd love for you to share what was it, because you sort of seeded in amongst what you've been talking about already is clearly you're a very good relationship builder and a very good relationship maintainer, which is, in my own belief, most of us, doesn't matter what you're manufacturing, what business or what service you're in, we're all in the relationship business. So if you can't get the relationships right, then it's not likely to go very far. But I'd love for you to talk through how that came about and how it sounds almost casual the way you described it, that Doug said, we'll just get you to do it for us, mate. Talk us through what gave him that confidence to say, Ben, you're the man, just get this done for us, mate.
Yeah, so super interesting. So when I was working at the creative agency, we're trying to start this kind of sports business and more the sports marketing side. And so I was getting more involved in the sports industry, but kind of on my own bat. At the 2 and under time, I just always made an effort outside of my work to just meet with as many people as possible. And it was probably 2 years before that moment happened, I emailed all the world tour owners. I just found all their email addresses online. I just kept trying. And so there's, 18 teams. So I reached out to 18 team owners, and the only person that got back to me was Doug. And he said, hey, Ben, you're sure? Like, I'm going to be down there. Let's go for a bike ride. And I actually pitched him the idea. I was like, hey, I've got this idea for kind of this athlete wellbeing stuff and this data visualization tools. What are your thoughts? He's like, yeah, that sounds good. And so we went for a bike ride, and his major sponsors were there, who's funny enough are actually some of my closest mates now. And we all went for a bike ride, and I was super fit then because I was still racing. So I was, we went for a pretty big bike ride. And I think they were probably impressed by that as well. I was like, oh, okay, this guy's actually rides as well. And so, and this is actually, there's probably a little key nugget in this, in that one of the best things I've ever done is and it helps that the industry I work in is in sport, endurance sports, but I was able to have conversations with, in air quotes, important people, because when you go on long bike rides, you build a tremendous relationship. When you're suffering, you're hurting, you're 5 hours in, you go through a lot on one bike ride, and there's not a lot of other people around who can ride with you. So you get this uninterrupted attention from the people you want to talk to. And then you get to the end of the bike ride, and everyone is, you talk about the moments of times, you went up this big hill and it was really hard, and you build this camaraderie that is so unique and so hard to do that you can't manufacture that in any other domain, really, unless you've gone through something together.
Yep.
And I found that was probably the best bike ride I ever went on, because, three of the most important people in my business career were all on that bike ride, and I met them all at that stage. And so yeah, I built some rapport there, which I wouldn't have been able to build anywhere else. And,
I want to really jump it, because I think you've raised a really good point there, that you're in the trenches together, basically, and in rarefied atmosphere, because there aren't too many people that would be able to perform at the levels that you were performing at that point in time. So the level of respect and mutual respect, that camaraderie that you've talked about, and that we are some of the chosen few who are doing this, would definitely build a level of engagement and connection that would be far and above anything that you would, and it's physical as well, so that there's something about the physicality of that, rather than just sitting across a boardroom table and having a chat, that would have really got you all at a level where they're saying, this guy's good, he understands what we're doing, and he can do it himself. Now we're ready to have a chat to him.
And I think that, and look, and Doug Ryder was the type of guy who was just, I don't know how to describe him. He's just a go-getter, and he always gives someone an opportunity. And I think, if I have to give a pat on my back to myself, is that I saw the opportunity and I kind of went for it, and nothing was too hard, and it was super unorthodox. And I think that's the thing, is that because I'd never gone, I just have never understood these professional or business ways of doing things, right? It's just kind of like everyone's just people. Yeah. And so I kind of just thought, like, why wouldn't you go for a bike ride with someone and just kind of talk business? And but I think that was just a stage where he just got to know me, I got to know him, and it was just he was just one of those people who had humongous corporate networks and connections. And he saw me as someone who was probably young and would actually get some stuff done if he kind of helped. And he probably thought, okay, well, I just have to give this guy a chance, and it's it's not costing me anything, and I like him, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So it kind of wasn't any skin off his back, but he probably saw it as a way to, get the team involved in some innovative things and that sort of thing. So I think he just liked being around people who were trying to have a crack, because that's kind of what he did as well.
Yeah, I was going to say his background was similar, was it? I'm guessing he had a similar pathway, and therefore, and clearly a pretty good reader of character to say, right, I read the right things in Ben. I'm confident that if we get behind him, he's going to produce the fruit.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. So, Doug's a way more accomplished person I ever will be, but he was an Olympian. He's a salesperson. He can sell anything as well, and just a tremendous business networker as well. And he's just a guy who does whatever it takes to achieve his goal. And so his team is an incredible world tour team in that they race for charity. So it's Doug's team. So they're called Team Quebec Next Hash at the moment. But Quebec is a bike charity foundation out of Africa where they donate bikes to these poorer communities, because the bikes are a way for those communities to live their life, and transport is a big issue for them. And so when they have bikes given to them, it opens up their entire world. They can get to schools and universities easier. They can buy food, and basically the wealth of their family increases when they have access to transport.
Love it.
Through bikes. And so that's his mission. He's just done whatever it takes, and he's had some hard times where the team's gone almost bust, but it always seems to just come back and make it happen. So, but yeah, then that was so over probably 3 years. I just stayed in touch with them, and we did do a bit of work with them in the company I was with, some small projects here and there. So he did get to see the way I worked as well in a professional setting. Yeah. And then I was always talking to him as mates as well to catch up every year, and I got to know his other networks as well. And that's so the combination of when I was like, hey Doug, I'm looking for some things to do, for him was probably like, okay, well cool, let's do everything we've ever spoken about.
So why a question that would bring to mind, I guess, why didn't he employ you versus say, okay, we'll set up your own business and we'll buy the produce?
Super interesting, right? And this is, I've thought about this quite a bit, in that there was lots of people who I kind of went to for jobs at that stage. I was like, okay, I'm looking, I know what I want to do now. I want to be involved in sports technology. And that's why I left the other business. So like, no, I want to do something now, and I want to do something where I can build a career in.
Yep.
And so I was went around to a whole bunch of connections, a whole bunch of networks, and I kind of was asking for jobs, and no one hired me. And it was kind of odd, because I didn't really have any skill set. And this is a really interesting thing, in that I can understand why no one hired me, because I just I'm not really a specialist in anything. And, people are, you could be a salesperson. I was like, I don't want to be a salesperson. I don't think I'm a salesperson. I kind of think I'm just I just like to start things, and I like to put value in. But everyone I went to, there's probably two key people, a guy called Scott Gibson and Doug Ryder. So they were on that kind of team side. And then another guy called James Begley, who is now my business partner. Yeah. And I went to both of them because they were both in the sports world. I said, look, hey, can I work for you? And they're like, no, I don't think you don't want a job. And so I went to Doug.
They probably knew you better than you knew you, by the sounds of things, mate.
I think so. I think they just thought, hey, all you have to do is take a bloody risk and you'll be all right. Like, I think I was pretty risk adverse at that stage and pretty conservative. And
why? Why were you risk adverse?
Well, I think I naturally am. And this is the interesting thing, because I'm certainly not now. I feel risk and I feel fear, absolutely, but I don't worry about that stuff as much anymore. But
was that from your upbringing?
I
mean, you're a good Italian in Adelaide. I know a lot of hard-working Italians who who, and they do very well on the sweat of their back.
Well, it's interesting you say that, right? Because I think the whole reason I think the way I think is because of my family, and that my whole life was, at the dinner table, we always spoke about business. My dad was self-employed, and he'd had a bunch of different things. He'd traveled the world with businesses, and he'd done a bunch of things. My mum was always pretty conservative. She was a nurse, always believed in education and university. And that was the one rule in our household is, because we all got dad's kind of business mindset in that we all wanted to take risks and do things. But, it was good because mum actually then said, well, you can go do that. Just make sure that you go to uni first. And that was kind of the general acceptance in the household. I was the youngest of 4 kids.
Yep.
And that it was, okay, we can do it. We can take as many risks as we want, but we just have to get our degree first. And I think that was a good move. It was just probably mum's little backup plan for all of us, because she knew how scary and uncertain being in business is, and I think she probably just thought, okay, well, as long as my kids can fall back on something, then they can take the risks. But growing up, it was interesting. Like my grandfather he had a thumping business in real estate, and my whole family's basically in real estate. But I didn't want to be involved in real estate. But just at dinner tables from a very young age, I remember taking my investment book. I used to write all my notes about it. This was like 8, and I'd be tracking stock prices and gold. I was obsessed with gold then. And I'd take it to the family dinners, and they would they would rip into me. I was like 8 years old, and my grandfather about, no, you haven't thought about this, you haven't thought about that. My uncle would get into me. My dad was always really nice to me, but what I liked about it was that they just didn't treat me like a kid. They were like, well, no, that's not going to work because of X, Y, Z. But look at this, and it was just kind of an environment where you got to just you got to learn. I learned a lot from a very young age just about business and how it works.
Awesome.
Because no one treated me like a kid. They just treated me like, well,
mate, I don't know of any 8-year-olds that walk around with an investment book, mate. What inspired? I'm really interested in that. What inspired you to even do that at that age, mate? Was it, I'm going to make money? I just want to make money, and gee whiz, the stock market looks like it's the go. I'm going to start tracking that. I mean, at 8 years of age, that's an investment book's generally the last thing I would see most 8-year-olds put some energy into.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like a look. I still didn't really understand. I actually didn't understand it at all. I just knew. I just I could kind of put some dots together. I thought, okay, this is like, and I was getting pocket money. And I was probably getting like, I don't know, $10 a month or something. And I think because I saw, and Dad would always keep me exposed to it. And I think he was probably said, oh look, Telstra stocks are like $1. And I probably thought, well, I've got $10, I can buy 10 Telstra stocks. And I think I probably did that at first, whereas, a house was $500,000. So I was like, well, I can't buy that with my pocket money.
Yep.
So I think it probably started like that. It was like, I can buy that. And I've just always loved business, and it's got nothing to do with the money, because I really don't care that much about money. It's just about, I love business. I love creating things. I love just, simple profit and loss, I love those formulas. I love thinking about, okay, well, to be able to get that off the ground is going to cost me X, Y, Z. If I do that, then if you take a margin, oh, cool. Actually, that business might be worth something. But I think the gold is what got me, because I used to be able to I used to track the gold price. It was a simple thing for me to do, because it was one asset, and it would either go up or down every day. And so I think for me, I was like, I could go buy some, and because I had enough money to buy gold, because I think at that stage it was like $200 an ounce.
Yeah. And
I think I'd saved up a lot of money. This is probably more when I was about 10. I'd saved up enough money, and I thought, this is a really interesting moment in my life as well. And I think I could see that I could purchase that, and I think that was the connection. I was like, oh, cool, well, that's something I can purchase. And as I saw the price go up and down, I'd be like, oh, if I had that, my money would be going up and down too.
Love it.
But I remember I went to Mum and Dad, and then I was like, I think I'm going to buy gold. And they were super supportive. They never lent me the money. And I remember this, looking back on this, I just remember thinking, oh, my Dad, can you just give me the money? Like, no, if you want to do it, you go put your pocket money into it. And I remember I never did it, because I was too scared to, because I didn't want to lose my money. And I thought that was a really important lesson, because if they had given me the money, I never would have learned that actually you do have to take a risk to make some money. And And I just remember this day that they just refused to give me the money, and I remember
lesson.
Go buy with your own money. And
I was brought up exactly the same way, and I'm exactly the same way with my son. My son, he doesn't do it anymore, but he used to come to me and say, "Dad, I want this. Dad, I want that." And I say, "Mate, you can have it just as soon as you save up enough money to buy it."
But I remember this fact in that, because then the months, probably a year went, and the gold price skyrocketed, and I remember just being really disappointed, and Dad being like, "Well, you had that opportunity, and you can still do it now." And I just kept missing it, but I would see it grow, and I'd be like, "Oh, I just want to get back in," but I just still wouldn't do it. Yeah.
Love it, mate. Something you touched on in the conversation there is your grandfather and quite a few of the family were heavily involved in property, and you were very quick to say, "There's no way I was going to do that." Talk to me about that. Because I was the same. My father was in real estate, and I vowed and declared I would never follow in footsteps. Yet I've done a full circle and ended up back there, and it's been very good to us. But what were your feelings on that?
Interesting. It's really, and I'm probably doing the same. Probably coming as I get older, I realised the value of property in a way, but I just didn't get excited by it. I just thought it was super boring, and I just thought it being, I just didn't. Probably again because I was too young, I didn't really ever think about owning a house, and I don't know. It was just different. Whereas I felt like businesses was a bit more exciting. It's a real life. It's live. It changes every day. There's challenges, and I just probably was more. And so when I saw the stock market, I saw it as investing in lots of different businesses. I didn't see it as like putting my money into getting. It wasn't an investment. It was more I'm buying a piece of that business, and I almost felt a little bit of ownership of it.
Yeah.
And whereas we bought property, I was like, well, I can't ever go to the house because I'm going to make money from it. Someone else is going to live there, and so I can't really tinker with it. And also I'd never had an income, and this is probably my one tie-up with property is I've never been one to want a wage or want an income.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I always found, okay, as I got older and started to realise how to buy property, I thought, well, you need to have an income to be able to buy property because the bank won't lend you the money. And I just never wanted to be tied down by an income. And so for me, that was probably the thing. Is like, well, I'm never going to be able to buy property because I'm never going to have an income because I'm going to make my money in other ways, and it's going to be sporadic, and I'm going to, go probably more down the capital gains route. So that was probably why I never really bought into it. And
it makes sense. I mean, property is boring. I say to people, successful investment is the most boring thing you're ever going to do. There's nothing exciting about it because you do your due diligence. You select the asset that you're going to put your money into, and if it's good enough, you're not going to be selling it anytime soon. So it's like watching paint dry or grass grow, mate. There's and if it is exciting, then you're probably not making any money. So what I love about what you're saying is because the excitement of building a business, that will eventually fund value and income that you can then park in property, and then you continue to build your business while your wealth is looking after itself.
Well, you hit nail on the head for me. So then I've come full circle for the last couple of years in that. So I got married, and my wife, well, we actually, I've been with my partner from a very young age, and that's a huge, I think, huge wealth builder in a way. Now we've had two incomes since we were very young, and so we're probably able to do things quicker than most as well in that. But she had a massive goal to buy a house, and that was a big dream for her. And again, I didn't really have any, but I thought, sure, I could happily have a house to live in. And now that I have one, I like tinkering and that sort of thing, which you can't do in a rental. But for me, we did buy a house, and we probably did buy it pretty early on. And then that was kind of then like, okay, we've got our house now, we're in property. Now I'm going to do the fun stuff. And it was kind of, and I think from that stage, and I started the business the week of buying a house. So that was another reason why I probably had a bit of fear. But now that I've had an income, and I pay myself an income, and now that I have more of a stable income, I do actually start to get more involved. Okay, well, maybe I could invest in that property and that. But I've actually got a pretty strict plan around stock portfolio and in ETFs, and just doing a long term. Every month put a bit of money in. And you're right, that's just boring, but it just works, and you get the compounding interest. And look, I'll probably do something similar with property in the future as well, because it's the same sort of model. But But I get my excitement from my business now. And if I didn't have my business and I had a day job that I didn't love, I don't think I'd be doing that, because I'd want to be doing something I can get my excitement from.
Yeah, I love it, mate. Now, I've gone off on a massive tangent, sort of coming back to where we were with the business side with Doug. So talk to us about how that evolved. So he's given you the opportunity. My read of what you're saying is he said, okay, I like your idea. You set up a business to do that, and we'll be your first customer, which is effectively going to fund you for a period. Talk us through what that looked like and where it led to from there.
Pretty much exactly right. So I think it was 2 Down Under, went bike riding, and I said, hey, Doug, I'm keen to do this. Basically, he said, all right, well, if you go, then one of his networks, Scott, who's now one of the investors in our business, who's been a huge mentor to me, he was one of the backers of Doug's team.
Yep.
And I met him as well, and he said, look, if you can give me a business plan in the next 24 hours, I'll consider it.
Love it.
And so I remember I was down at my parents' holiday house, and I was just working on this business plan the whole weekend, and I said it to him, and I went very detailed, and I still didn't know, because I knew enough about business to create a business plan and some basic financials, but
which is probably what Scott was trying to understand, whether you really understood the financials to give him confidence to open the checkbook, mate.
Yeah, and I think, and looking back at the financials, I was so wrong, but I think you're probably right. It was more like, okay, at least he knows enough to be able to put it together.
Yeah.
And so I went with that, and he goes, oh, cool, yeah, let's do it. And so he funded it for the team. Basically said, yep, the team will be the first client, but we'll pay you up front. And that was the biggest thing. So he's like, look, even if you don't deliver it for another 6 months, like, we understand you have to build the product, but I'm going to pay you now, so you can have some startup capital, you can go hire some people. And I had a mate who I was working with at the time, Ryan, who's CTO, and he was my co-founder. So yeah, basically with that, I went to Ryan and said, hey mate, let's do it. He joined as my co-founder, and I still had a bit of doubt then, though. And this is another pivotal point is, so Scott had signed on, Doug had signed on. They said, yep, got some money for you. I had Ryan, who was keen to jump in and be our technical co-founder. So we had everything we needed. And I remember going to my mate James Begley, who probably a lot of people in Adelaide would know, but who's now a co-founder of my business as well. But I had a coffee with him, and I went to him for a job before as well, and this is kind of the coffee. I said to him, look, I've got this opportunity, this is the go, but I'm just not sure. And I had just bought a house the week before, and I was like, I don't know, I don't think I'm sure ready for the risk. And I was 23, just about to turn 24 at that time. And Beggs, who had gone through a lot of business heartache, had just the most, just put so much in his business, invested a lot of money and time and energy, and he just went, mate, you're an idiot. You literally have a paying client.
Mate, he'd be looking at you, shaking his head, I reckon, going, what are you even talking to me for? I would kill for the opportunity that's just been put on your table. Am I right?
He's like, you have a technical founder who is amazing. You have money. He's like, what do you need? And I was like, I don't know, And he's like, all right, well, I'll come in as well. I'll back you. I'll help you. And that's kind of all I needed. I wanted him in the business too. So I kind of said, well, how about you come in? He's like, mate, if it means that you're going to start it, yes, I'll join you. And so kind of three of us kind of did it and got it done. And it's kind of all I needed was someone to almost just be like, it's going to be okay. And the rest is history from then. And it just has kind of gone from there. And it's only been 3.5 years. It feels like a lot longer. But I think during that time, probably a year and a half after that, is probably a clear defining point in the business career where I thought it all kind of made sense to me. Like everything, the whole world kind of made sense in that, okay, actually there's the whole scared of money. Like I just don't see money as that anymore. And if, I needed to be able to see it work for me. I needed to see a risk pay off for me to almost see the light. And that was, so if Beggs wasn't there, I'd probably still be trying to find a job working somewhere else. And,
well, while you're talking about money, let's talk about your relationship with money, because it's it's a thing, again, it's a mindset thing that can make or break most people. It sounds like the pennies drop for you over time, and you don't see it as such a mountain to overcome anymore. What was your mindset on money, and what is it now as a result of what you've been through?
Yeah, so I've got I don't even know how to describe it, but my relationship with money is that I just don't even really care for it. I just don't have any feelings towards it. And it's not like I grew up in a poor household. Like, I grew up in a really good household where we had money. We never went without. And I don't want people thinking I came from a poor, like, it wasn't we're really tight with money, and so I always thought money was everything. It wasn't like that at all. I don't know, I just always was probably pretty conservative with money. I never really wanted to spend too much, but I also was never willing to invest it or risk it. I'd kind of just earn it and keep it. And I also wanted to do lots of things, and so I wanted to ride my bike, I wanted to do this, and I kept trying to do all these other businesses. And so I just thought, I don't want to take income, because as soon as I take an income, then I have to work for someone else. And so I think I kind of just felt like, well, if I don't spend money, I don't have to earn money. And then obviously as I grew up and realised I have to pay the bills, it became, and my wife now was probably the first one to tell me to get a job. And I think that was when I was probably like, okay, I need to find something to be able to make enough money to earn an income, but I don't want the income to be I don't want it to be my source of wealth.
Yeah.
Because I just saw it. I was like, well, I can only earn a maximum of, I don't even know what I don't know, say like 100K, I always thought would be the maximum amount of money I could ever make a year. And I thought, well, but what if I want to make $1 million a year? Like, it's just, I couldn't do it because there's not enough hours in the day. And I remember when I was at uni, I was sitting on a hill after a class, and I was kind of just chilling out, having a coffee by myself, and I wrote down all the things I wanted in my life. And it's still pretty true now. Like, I think I wanted a house, nice house. I wanted a holiday house, and I wanted some cars. And it was all materialistic things. And it's very interesting the way, as you grow up, you think differently. But I remember coming up with a number, and I needed $636,000 a year was the income I needed to make to get everything I wanted. And that was based on how I could leverage that to get different loans and whatnot. And I wrote that on my whiteboard. I was like, okay, that's my target. And I remember trying to achieve that, and it just didn't make sense for me to have an income. I thought I could never earn that much money through an income. And so then that's kind of the realization for me. I was like, all right, well, money, if I'm tired, to be able to earn that money, I can't have a job. And so then how else am I going to make money? Well, it's going to have to come from business, it's going to come from investments. And so I think it's just, that's kind of when I don't even know how to really describe this, but I think that was when I kind of transitioned away from going, okay, well, I need to kind of shake that almost scared to lose money feeling and kind of go all in on how do I make money? How do I be able to actually make more money to be able to do these things and just not have to worry about earning a yearly income? And but it wasn't probably until my thoughts on money now is that it is just a scorecard. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything. I have, money is just an ability for you to do things in your life, and half the time people want to be millionaires, but they can live a millionaire lifestyle off of 30 grand a year.
Yeah.
I've got one of my very good mate of mine is I admire him so much because he's a paramedic, he works part-time, and a good amount of money, but part-time wage, right? Yeah. And he's just lives so cheaply, but he works 4 days on and has 12 days off.
Yeah. And
he's retired. And I remember I went surfing with him, and I remember this guy came up to him and there's a whole oh mate, you're too young to be, why aren't you working and trying to build your money? He's like, mate, I'm retired. And he was 26. He's like, I'm retired. I'm doing right now what everyone is working 50 years of their life to do. He's like, I've got it set. I live the perfect life, and you can't argue with that. And I see him and I just go, that is awesome, because he's figured it out.
Yeah.
And so that's where I thought, okay, well, he doesn't need to have millions in his bank account to be able to live that life. He's already living that life. And so that's when I thought, well, it's actually got nothing to do with the money. You don't need $1 million to do that. It's just about what do you want to do. And And how you do it. So my relationship with money is, I love it. I think it's great. I think can be a source of positivity. It can be a source of bad things, but I think it's just a scorecard and allows you to do things. And but for me, I love making it, and it's got nothing to do with actually using the money. It's just I love business, and fortunately or unfortunately, is the scorecard of business is money.
Yeah,
and
it's also the fuel. It's the fuel that allows you to build and add value. That's the currency.
That's actually a very good point. In that raising capital for me is it makes sense now to me. Whereas when I was probably younger, I didn't understand it. But if we're trying to build a business worth X, then if I'm raising X amount of money, but I'm going to use that and almost be the factory to make that become more money, that is a very simple formula. And and so then I don't get scared about very big numbers, because it's going to cost me $2 million, but I'm going to turn that into $15 million.
Yeah.
And it's just a simple formula. But when you're younger, you see $1 million, that's so much money. But when you kind of see it black and white of that's just 1 + 2 = 3 kind of thing. And then you start seeing money as building, you need it to build more value, and by building value, you're helping more people, and it doesn't really become about the numbers at all.
Yeah, love it. So just for the listeners' benefit, because my understanding is that Lumin and H.O.A.P are doing very well, just put some colour around that, because with some of the organisations and the elite sporting teams, groups and whatnot that you're now working with, can you just put some shape around, since that initial seed funding from Doug and Co, where is the business at now, and what are you doing with who, where?
Yeah. So Lumin Sports in the sports world is, so I guess we're a tech startup. I guess we're probably just shrugging that startup-esque kind of phase, in that we're starting to become what I'd say, more of a solid business. But as a tech company, we've relied on, I guess, raising capital to grow fast. And I think that's a big thing in tech companies and software companies, is that although they're highly profitable business models, you kind of have to grow very fast to build some market share. And that costs money. And so it's acceptable to, I guess, lose money for probably a period of time, probably around 5 years.
Yep.
At which stage you then want to have some market share, and then start to grow kind of on your own bat. And so as a company, and software moves very fast, so you also have to continuously change it up and innovate. And it's a very fast-paced environment. So Lumin Sports is all about interpreting complex athlete and team data for decision makers. So the Dougs of the world, he had probably 30 athletes with probably 30 different data points being collected on each athlete on any given day, training session or race day. He wanted to know who his best riders were, who was his fittest riders, who he sends to races, where they're located around the world, so then who's the quickest person to get to that race. And we built a platform that collected all of that data, analysed that data, and basically fed him very key insights, because I think you mentioned in the opening is that it's overwhelming, all the data we collect right now, and actually it's not about how much we have so much data. Actually the value is in interpreting data, or giving someone the ability to interpret data very easily and very quickly.
Yep.
And that was kind of the key we've done in sport, and so we make it really easy for decision makers to make decisions.
And without knowing the ins and outs of it, Ben, and a little bit that you've mentioned during your discussion, it's a visual dashboard is basically what you're talking about. So someone can look at it and go, right, and they can go, this is where it's at. And because they can pick that very quickly, they can go, this is what we need to do. Is that am I reading that right?
Absolutely. Yep. So we maybe take 1 million different lines of data, but we'll show Doug, 2 out of your athletes are unhealthy, or 4 of your athletes out of 50 are ready to race in this race. And so there's so much data behind that. But we'll show him one widget, one card, which gives him basically a green or red light. And so he doesn't have to look at all the data, he doesn't have to analyze it himself. We just say, yep, here's a dashboard, go for these riders, not go for these riders. And then that's kind of our sports side of our platform. And then last year, during COVID was pretty rough with us as well, and we lost a lot of clients. Obviously, sporting teams shut down. We were halfway through a capital raise and had a few investors pull out, and it was horrible, actually.
It must have been very confronting, mate, because you're probably almost on the crest of a wave. I'm guessing the money coming in, you've got investors committed, you're ready to pull the trigger and put the foot on the accelerator, and bang, COVID hits.
Pretty much, yep. And then so we weren't able to close our capital raise because we hadn't reached the minimum, and didn't have a lot of money left. And a lot of our investors were fantastic. You know, they're like, "Yep, cool, we're in. Just start using the money in a way and kind of figure it out." And we extended the raise for another 6 months. But at the same time, and this is the thing in hindsight, right? Is everything happens for a reason, and I do believe that, because we had one of our major sponsors actually coming back. It was basically from Doug's team. One of the sponsors from Doug's team came to us and said, "Look, we've seen the work you've done with the team for athletes. Is there any way we could start tracking our employee well-being during COVID when everyone's working from home?" And we're kind of like, yeah, I reckon we could. And we were desperate for any opportunity at that stage. So we kind of went, yeah, all right, we'll see what we can turn around in a few weeks. And that's kind of the start of what was Lumin Wellbeing at that stage.
Yep.
And it was based on our sports platform. We rolled it out to probably 10 to 15 companies, signed up as our early adopters, paid us for it. It was a shit product. It didn't really work. Like it did, but it didn't suit the market. It was very sports heavy, but the solution, and as in the problem was there, and people were paying for the solution, and we just knew that it needed to, we needed to repurpose and purpose build a platform for corporates, and we'll be onto something. And so we did that. We raised money on the back of that, then went basically into stealth mode, building that out for 9 months, and we only launched H.O.A.P in March this year, and H.O.A.P is basically a software platform that quantifies well-being for decision makers of teams and organizations, and essentially makes leaders great leaders. So we have essentially this smart ecosystem where not only are we looking after the employees' well-being and showing that to teams so they can improve different departments and understand what's going on, why some teams are more stressed than others, why you try to catch things before they become big issues. Because obviously presenteeism and absenteeism in the workplace costs a lot of money, and not only is it the right thing to do, but then how do we make those leaders actually be great leaders? By feeding them the data at the exact time so they can make a decision and actually do good in the workplace. So an athlete may be trending low for a particular wellbeing metric. We have this smart ecosystem that alerts leaders to say, hey, we think you should have a conversation with this person. Here's how you should do it. And almost give them the skill set and make it as easy for them as possible, because all they have to do is go, hey, Jack, how are you going? Is everything all right? And then that then creates a conversation that all these issues come out of it, and then they can make actual change.
I love this. I love this. Can you give me an example? So, example of some of the data measures or the data indicators. Talk me through what some of those might be, and then what that tells the leader, and then what conversation they have. Can you sort of put a little example, paint that out for us?
Yeah. So we have, so there's two components to the platform. There's the employee app, which we call the talent app. So we call our employees talent. And that is basically a tool which we've actually developed through all of our knowledge and experience in professional sport. And so that's all around that. One thing we've learned is that the world's highest performing teams have the most well individuals in their teams. They have individuals who have high well-being. They're very self-aware. They know when they need to have rests. They know when they can push hard. And they also know they're also resilient. And so we learned that pretty early on. And so we're building all these tools based on some research, some evidence-based research from a guy called Professor Michael Kellman. And so around well-being states. And we transferred that into H.O.A.P. So we thought, okay, well, we need to build a tool for individual talent to be able to become more self-aware and understand the importance of self-awareness.
Yep.
And so the H.O.A.P. mobile app is all around building self-awareness. We also need to inspire people to take care of their own well-being. And everything we do is performance well-being. It's not well-being, to be happier or to be more joyful. It's actually to perform better in your everyday life, not just as an employee, but in every aspect of your life. Yeah. And so we have a slightly different start step. So the mobile app teaches individuals to become more self-aware.
Yep. It
then delivers inspirational content through high performers, athletes, politicians, in a very engaging way. So they have a journey series which talks about their own well-being journey and how they deal with high-pressure situations, And the idea is that's meant to bring these high performers off the pedestal and say, oh, they're actually like me too. They still get anxious before a race. They still get, anxious before they go on stage. They deal with this. They've got wife and kids. And then we have the Experts series, which is experts in our well-being states of emotional well-being, mental well-being, physical well-being, sleep well-being, and then more of a culture and leadership and workplace well-being. And they are a bit more long-form content where it's very engaging, high-quality content, and they basically teach practical advice around those well-being states and how to improve them.
Wow.
We then have the leadership side of it is we're collecting a lot of that data, and then we're basically just feeding that into some dashboards where it's almost a traffic light system where a leader can log on and see instantly which departments are trending low, which individuals are trending high or low as well. And so then they can have a conversation with those individuals when that happens. And then we also have the alerts. So you could be, as a leader, you could be on your way on the train into work and you'll get pinged saying, John is trending low in his mental well-being today, meaning he's stressed. Best you have a conversation first thing this morning. And here's, instead of going and saying, hey, I saw your score's low, it's more that, hey, here's a sentence to start the conversation. Hey, John, how are you? How's everything going? And then, from that point, hopefully a conversation starts. So it's all about giving them the tools to have those conversations.
Dynamic. It's very dynamic rather than the 3-month review when you sit down and have the sort of cursory chat. You're basically reading the pulse of the individual and then collectively the organisation on the spot, which is...
That's right. And we also learned that the best leaders already do that. Yeah. And so basically all we're doing is creating a smart ecosystem that mimics the best leaders in the world and the best leaders who get the best team performances. And we're trying to bring that into every team. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, make the same as our sports platform, make sure they're interpreting the data the best they can so they can then make a decision and be the best leader they can be.
It's brilliant, mate. Let's talk about peak performance for a minute. How do you define peak performance, Ben?
Yeah, don't know how I define it. I know how I define it for myself, I guess. So for
let's start there.
It's I learned pretty early on that I need to be active and I need to exercise every single day to perform at my best. So that's something that I just know I need to do. The days that I don't exercise are the days that I just don't have a good day.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty ruthless on this when a lot of people say, oh, it's when you have kids and when you get a family, it's very selfish to go run. But I thought, well, no, it's actually the opposite in that.
Yeah.
For me, that's how I'm a better person when I do that, and I'm very self-aware that I need to do that every morning. And if I don't do that, I just don't perform in any aspect of my life.
Same. I'm a grumpy bastard if I don't. That's and it's got to the point where my good wife Ben says, you need to go and do some exercise, and that's code for saying you're a grumpy bastard.
Yeah, but it's so true, right? And this is one thing that because I've done it from a young age as well. It's where I feel most comfortable. It's where I build my confidence from.
Yeah.
It makes me happier, but it's also where I also build business networks out of that too. And all my best friends are people I exercise with, and so it's got every aspect of my well-being. It's got my social well-being. It's got, my physical well-being. It's got my mental well-being. I sleep better. It just has every aspect of my well-being in one thing, and that is exercise, and generally followed by a coffee afterwards. So you get all that stuff.
You got it all covered there, mate. I love it.
So that's absolutely key for me. And then I do. That's probably just the foundation of any day. And then once you've done that, you can then tackle any issue that comes your way. I also, play around with my diet a bit. I go through all different ways, but I've kind of settled on something now a little bit more where I just eat less than I used to. And I think as I got older, I've realised I don't have to eat as much. And generally that makes me feel a bit sharper. I don't feel sluggish. And I feel like diet's a pretty key part of feeling good.
Yeah.
And then one thing I always do is I don't wear a suit or anything. I dress pretty casually, but even during the work from home, I always will shower. Again, it's what everyone does, but it's more, I always take pride in, I guess, just getting dressed. And I remember even when I work from home, I still go get dressed. And for me, that's the key. Like, cool, I'm crossing the line. I'm now working.
Yep.
And then once I'm working, I'm at work. Whereas I'm very, very clear cut with I'm at home and I'm relaxing, and when I'm on and I'm performing. It doesn't always mean that I stay focused, but I've just never really understood. Well, not understood, but just for me, I do need to have very clear-cut lines with when I work and when I don't work, or when I'm required to perform and not perform, and I protect that. And then I get lots of sleep, and I make sure before I go to bed, I do a stretch for probably half an hour, bit of like a yoga / meditation. It's a bit of a hybrid. But for me, that's my winding down, and then I read before I go to bed, and I have the best sleep ever. And then I wake up and do it all over again. But for me, that's my foundation.
How many hours a night do you sleep, mate?
Yeah, interesting actually. Still probably not much. I probably only get 6.5 hours, which is probably more than a lot of parents out there. But I don't have kids or anything, but for me, that's probably what I need. I probably feel better on 7.5 to 8. That's probably what I actually need, but I can still perform pretty well on 6.5. But I nap a lot. Even at the office, I go in and have a 15-minute nap, and that's kind of all I need.
So do I. Well, I do a couple of 20-minute meditations, beginning and end of the day, that just sort of calms the space. But very partial to particularly the sort of mid-afternoon exercise. I'll just grab a 10 or 15-minute nap, and then I'm back on it, and away we go. How
great is it? I think it's people will just have coffee and fast, try to push through, but it's 15 minutes out of your day or 20 minutes out of your day, and you're just so much more productive.
So good. It's so good, mate. Some people sort of dig me about it, but it's like, well, don't knock it until you try it. We've got got this sort of blinkers on about how you have to go hard, you have to go all day. So people pump themselves up with caffeine and every other damn thing. But
I think that's a key point you made then, right? Like, peak performance for me is about output, and it's all about the output. And so I don't care if you have to work 20 hours a day to get that output, or you could be working 2 hours a day of actual work and still get the same output. It's all about the output. And so if you're having a rest for 20 minutes, some people might say that's lazy, but you'll output more than they potentially will, because they're trying to power through for 8-9 hours.
Totally agree, mate. 100% agree. Mate, quick question. This probably sounds a bit odd. Why H.O.A.P? I mean, I can guess why H.O.A.P, because it gives you hope, but the H.O.A.P, how did you come up with that tag?
Yeah. So it's probably the one time we actually got a proper agency involved to name it, but they were really good. So it actually stands for human optimisation and performance. And so it means that's what we do. We're all about optimising human performance, and also the H.O.A.P brand's a little bit nicer, and hopefully brings a bit of hope to people.
It's good. It's good play on words. I love it, because it gives you hope about the future, because you're able to monitor and know where you're at, and therefore what you need to be doing to keep yourself on track. It's awesome, mate. An area that I'd love to dig into a little bit as we sort of bring it to a close is the whole startup challenge, because I mean, for listeners that have tuned in today and have had no exposure to the startup world, they go, well, how easy is that? If Ben can do it, he puts it out there and someone throws some money at him away he goes. You and I know that is not the case, and that there's a multitude of startups that don't get anywhere. I'd love you to talk through a couple of key aspects of that for me, if you don't mind. And you sort of touched on some of this, that the startup capital funding equation. I mean, you've done it a number of times now. Can you talk us through what your approach has been to that, and how you've managed to actually get in a position where investors are comfortable committing pretty sizable sums of money at what you're looking to build?
Yeah, I think it's, so many different aspects of all of this, and I often find myself defending myself to people who probably don't really understand the startup space, and that, every single business in the world was once a startup, and so it's not a new thing. Apple was a startup, Google was a startup, but even, the local hardware store is a startup, and so I think, people see startups as being these big, risky ventures, but every single business is a startup. And so I think the difference is what people define as a startup now is probably more technology and probably fast growth. And so they see it as being this. So the startup world is all about, or the reason why people invest in startups is the return on investment can be quite high. In that you can, and generally they're business models that are very profitable. And I think a lot of people don't understand this because they always see that a lot of tech companies lose money. But the actual business model behind it is incredibly profitable. Yeah. They choose to lose money deliberately to gain market share, which I'll jump into in a moment on how that kind of works. Pardon me, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Is that they're these vehicles that can generate wealth very quickly when done right, and so that's why investors want to be involved in it, because they can put some money in, and then within 5 years' time, they can have a significant increase in their investment, just due to how fast these move. Yeah. But they take a lot of money to do, and so they're kind of they're black and white. They're not you. Some have self-funded, and there's been some pretty good examples of people who've self-funded and bootstrapped a billion-dollar business, which is awesome to see. But majority of them are a core group of key founders who are technical. You have a combination of technical founders and market insiders generally. So investors want to see a good, strong technical team, and they also want to see a team that really understands the market and the problem that they're trying to solve. Yeah. And that's kind of what they're investing in. And I think, we mentioned this before the podcast, in that execution is 99% of it. The idea is 1%. Yeah. And most of the time the idea changes as you go through. And so it's all about the execution. So they're investing in teams. Generally, the investors who invest understand that any business, no matter how big, it's been started by people. Yep. And it's just about people working together. And if people have the attributes, so all the things that they look for, generally hard work, resilient, kind of all in, you barely find a startup founder who's not all in, or you'll be able to see it very quickly. Yep. when they're not. Yeah. So generally, it's kind of these passion projects of people's life's work are behind them, and so as an investor, why wouldn't you jump in? Generally investors, there's multiple different types of investors, but the individual investors are generally ex-business people themselves, and so they kind of they've probably made a bit of money in their own environment, and they kind of understood how much fun it was, and they kind of see it as it's almost back to the starting point for them.
It's having their kids again. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And so, and they also understand it. They just understand how much value can be created in a quick period of time. So to kind of quickly give a rundown on how, I guess, technology startups work, in that, we're not defined by a 1 year P&L, and, they're still instruments that we use to determine our growth and if we're moving in the right direction. But I think a lot of people get trapped into this notion of, well, you have to be profitable in 3 years because that's just what all small businesses do, right? And I was having this discussion with someone else. I said, well, whoever said that your financial records had to be in a 12 month, why can't it be 10 years? Yeah. Why can't it, instead of a year, you work in a decade? And that's kind of what technology companies do. They know they need market share, so they choose to raise a significant amount of capital, because if they can get to $100 million in rev, and then they want to be profitable then, well, they can spit out $40 million a year in profit. Whereas if they're profitable at $1 million in rev, well, they're only going to grow very, very small amount, and the amount of money they're actually going to be spitting out is very small. Yep. And so it's actually, if you spend a lot of money to get to a very sizable size, then you can flick the switch to profitability, and then it's a lot of profit and very valuable. And so investors know that they're in it for that kind of probably that decade. It's more of a 10-year path, but if it works, this extraordinary amount of wealth you can provide, and you can also go global very quickly and help a lot of people very quickly, and your products can be used by all regions very quickly, which is something that is traditionally been limited to a lot of businesses.
Yeah, and very well said, mate. One of the key skills that I hear from our mutual friend Andrew Montesi that you bring to the table is that you're one of those guys that's just not scared to hit anyone up. Talk to us about that in the sort of the courage and conviction you have in terms of just not being scared to ask anyone anything.
Yeah, I think it's a like I'm no hero in terms of like I still get scared and I still feel like it'd be a bit embarrassing if they were angry by me reaching out, but then you kind of always come back to is like, well, I don't like in a way like I'm not defined by what they think of me, and if it just means that like what's the worst that can happen? They say no, then I'm in the same position I was in before I even thought about sending it. So for me, it's just I've never understood why people wouldn't. It is scary. Like cold calling people is really scary, but you do it a couple of times, and if you can take rejection, then it doesn't really matter. And I think that's the thing. You have to have thick skin, but then you quickly realise that what's the worst that can happen? Someone just goes, oh. But actually, the worst that happens is those people, the people you want to take notice of. You go, shit, that took balls for that person to do that. Okay, I might, they're now on my radar. They may not do work with you or get what you want at that moment, but you're on their radar.
Exactly, and the right people will think exactly that. If he's got the courage to do that, then that's a bit of an indicator of other things for the right people. No, I love that, mate. We've only really scratched the surface today, so I'm going to park the conversation to come back to you at a later point to dig in a little bit deeper.
Love it.
And I think given the growth that the Lumin Group and H.O.A.P are enjoying, it would be good to track your trajectory by checking in again, given the massive moves that you're making in that space. But what I'd love to do, mate, is shift into what I affectionately refer to as the ambush series, which are the typical podcast Fast Five. And the first of those, mate, is what's your favourite quote and why?
My favourite quote and why is probably a couple of things.
Yeah.
I'm always I couldn't come up with one, but for me, it's probably, I have so many different quotes, and all the guys around here and girls would pay me out about half the quotes that I make up and try to stick in the ground. But it's probably happiness is only real when shared with others. That's probably a big one and that was actually by, I forgot his name, someone McCandles. There's a really interesting story of he was kind of disheartened with the world and thought he would go to Alaska on his own and he would be happy there, and then he'd end up dying from food poisoning and realised that actually happiness is actually only real when you share it with others. And I thought that was pretty powerful.
Very powerful.
And then the other one was life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, which is a John Lennon one, which is so true. We're always in our head about strategy planning, but actually life is the stuff that actually happens when you're doing that. It's the boring dinner meals when you're prepping dinner. It's the train rides into work. It's all of that, and it's actually so beautiful in its own way. And it's pretty magical. Spot
on. It's certainly enjoy the moment. You might be planning for the future, but you've got to be enjoying the moment. Otherwise, what are you doing it for? No, love that, mate. You've probably from what you've said already, you're an avid reader. So, what would be the top book that you'd recommend we have a read of, and why?
Yeah, I got a lot. But the number one book that stands out by far is called Shoe-Dog, which is the founder of Nike. Yeah, we actually make every employee that starts here gets a brand new copy of Shoe-Dog on their desk on their first day.
Yeah.
And I just think it just perfectly describes the startup journey and everything about it. The personal struggles, the business struggles, how unorthodox it is, and just how uncertain it is, and how it's not linear, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great read, actually. I'd love that book. This one's a little bit left field, Ben, but most Aussies believe that they pay way too much tax. What's the top legal thing that you've done to minimise the tax that you pay?
Yes, this is an interesting one. And maybe I've never probably really had a problem with paying tax because I probably never earn enough. But it's probably because it's an interesting one because I hold my investments for a long period of time, and so I almost delay my tax. I haven't really had a sizable taxable event because I haven't had any capital gains or exits yet. So a lot of my wealth is tied up in things that are building more and more wealth, and I think and I try to reduce my income as much as possible, and because that's the thing that you get taxed the most on is your personal income. And so if I can reduce that as much as possible and actually generate wealth through other means, that's probably the way that I do it. I'm almost just delaying delaying my tax rather than reducing it.
Well, and you're building wealth at the same time, and you're allowing, rather than hand over the cash to the tax office, you're allowing it to exponentially grow in effectively reinvesting it by leaving it there. So, and can I ask, where are you building that wealth?
Yeah, so obviously my business in the Lumin Group is my shares in that. Is I'm an employee of this business, but also a shareholder. So I'm in control of building the value of my shares in that, and that's probably my biggest biggest wealth. Like that, if that goes well, that will be where most of my wealth comes from.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do pay myself an income, and I do distribute portions of that to ETFs mainly, so electronically traded funds. Which I do on the stock market, and that's just like you said, just the boring old.
Yep.
Every month, put a bit of money into a low cost ETF index fund, which just tracks the average market returns of 6 to 11%, and in 30 years' time, I'll start using that. But the reason I did that and not in my super fund is because, and I may be wrong with this, and it's certainly not financial advice, but I feel like that's I can leverage off of that. So, it's still there. I don't ever have to take it out, but I can.
Exactly. You can. Yeah, absolutely you can. No, great thoughts and a great plan, because what I love about the index fund side of things, very similar to property if it's set up the right way, is it's pretty much set and forget. You just get out of the road and let it do its thing while you focus on building your business. So that's awesome. While we're on the investment subject, what's the worst and the best piece of investment advice that you've received to date?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like the worst in pieces of investment advice for me is probably haven't really had any. It's probably because I probably don't listen to people who, the worst advice probably comes from people who don't really get it, and I probably don't really take their thoughts seriously anyway. And the ones that I do take seriously, I'd probably have a really strong discussion with them about it and get to a point. So I wouldn't say I really had too much worse. Probably, I don't know. I don't really have many people tell me investment advice.
What about the best?
The best is it's probably, and this is a little bit left of field, but was when James Begley told me to stop being an idiot and go in and start my own business. I think that was something. Don't take the easy option of getting an income. Actually, take the risk and start your own business, because that is single-handedly has changed my life and has single-handedly been my ability to generate the most amount of wealth that I'd ever be able to create anywhere else. And again, I haven't got anything yet from it, and it's still a long way to go. But that is the ability to generate your own wealth in your own business it just far exceeds anything you can do without that vehicle.
Totally agree. Yeah, 100%. Final one on the Fast Five. What's a personal habit that you believe contributes most to your success today?
Yeah, for me, it's the exercise. It's every aspect of my life improves when I have structured training and exercise in my life, and I like to think I still try to train like a pro athlete in a way, and for me that's so vital to everything I do in my life.
Yeah. What, given your sort of past interest and exposure in the triathlons, is that the work that you're still doing? What's your structured training look like now? What are you doing? Yeah,
so I mainly just run now, and I still try to set myself goals. I do one ultra marathon every year, and then I try to do some smaller kind of shorter runs. I like to do the park run every Saturday, which for me is just such a cool thing. It's a 5K community event, and you get a group of guys out there who like to race. But it's all fun and games, but it's just, I love that. I love competing and racing still. So mainly just running now, and I surf a little bit, but it's mainly running. Surfing's been a new thing for me, which has been cool to learn a new skill and learn a new hobby. But running, and it's just doing my usual one speed set, probably two speed sets, one long distance set, and some easy runs in between. And all my best mates run, so I get to hang out with them, and we get to do some old sessions we used to do back in the heyday, and it's good fun.
Love it, mate. Final question then: if I gave you a microphone that spoke to every single one of the 7.7 billion odd people that are alive in the world, and gave you a minute to talk, what would you say?
Yes, this is a really interesting one. Look, I think for me, Actually, yeah, for me, this is the thing that occurred in my life, which has completely changed the way I think about everything, is that every single thing that is being built in this world has been built by people. And when you realise that there's no experts, no one was an expert, they were just a person who became an expert, who've been able to do things, and people have backed them. And when you realise that every business, a table, a computer, everything has been built by people, and when it kind of clicks, it's hard to understand it. But when it clicks and you kind of realise that people are backing you to do things, it becomes very clear that everything is possible. You realise that everyone has their own fears and anxieties and joys, and you just realise how obtainable everything is in the world. And so that would probably be the number one, is that everything in this world is built by people. And I think a lot of people think that they can't do something because it's been built by someone who's smarter and stronger and better than they are, or have more access to money than they do. But at the end of the day, everyone is just people, and so everyone's has the same opportunity to achieve greatness. And yeah, that's probably it.
And you're saying that very well. It's and as you mentioned earlier in the conversation, it's just not being scared to have a crack. That's what it boils down to, because it doesn't have to be the best idea or the newest idea or the greatest innovation either. But if you've got the persistence and the passion to see it through, it's that passion that other people will see, that they'll get behind you and help you make it happen.
Well, there's probably something on that just as well, in that, I know it's just a 60-second billboard, but if I had 2 minutes, I'd probably then also say that, tell everyone your goals and ambitions, because everyone's too busy with their own stuff to care about stealing anything that you've said. But it's most of the time is actually, if you talk about your ambitions, you talk about your goals, firstly it keeps you accountable, but it actually, people want to help, and they actually will go, oh, that's kind of cool. Oh yeah, I'll help you for that. And then you get this galvanization of momentum behind you, because people are supporting you. Then more people support you, and then, when you tell everyone everything you want to achieve, you're opening yourself up for people to help you achieve that.
Love it, mate. It's absolutely true. And how many people keep things to themselves because they're fearful that they'll either be laughed at, scorned, or someone will think it's stupid, rather than just put it out there. And by putting it out there, you attract the people who believe what you believe, and once you've got that tribe together, then you can move mountains. There's no question about it. Mate, really love the chat. You've got a lot of energy and a lot to contribute. I'm looking forward to getting you back on to, as I say, track the trajectory of and the success that you'll continue to have with the Lumin Group and H.O.A.P, and really appreciate you spending time on Getting Invested today.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it, and thanks so much for the opportunity to talk, because I can talk.
You do it very well, mate. It's worth listening to, so appreciate your time. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Matt.
Cheers.
Get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes. Just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's hello@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/get-invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die